So a data flow map is useful for the processes where there are a number of steps or parties involved, and it will allow you to ensure that you've identified all the components in that process. So it embeds the data protection by design, and our tool is essential for organisations seeking to embed their data protection by design and also by default in their processes. There's optional access to other security controls. So the data flow mapping tool integrates with Compliance Manager, which is another one of our tools on the CyberComply platform. You can record what security controls that have been applied to a particular process and keep track of whether that process is governed by specific or regulatory or statutory and contractual requirements. So then we have a little tip for when you begin to map out your data. So to create an accurate flow of your data map, it's always a good idea to have the relevant meetings with your heads of departments to find out what every step of the process is, who carries out each step, what assets are used to do so, and then identify all those interaction points between all of the parties and unforeseen or unintended uses for that data. So we'll just have a look at this case study here. Some of you might remember back in September, so not too long ago, British Airways revealed that 380,000 customers' payment cards and records have been hacked over 15 days. So obviously that was had a massive impact on the organisation, and it's something that could have been avoided with those relevant steps put in place. Then we'll just have a look at the user management. So on the initial license, as I know some of you will already have the data flow mapping tool that are on here, you can have up to 5 users as your standard that can all use the tool simultaneously and edit as well, and there's different roles which we'll go through when we get onto the tool itself. You can extend this as well and build those users up and have as many users that would fit your business needs. And also there's a bit there about archiving users. So as I mentioned, there are different role statuses for each of the users. So there is one of those options to revoke an access if you would like to free up one of your 5 users for an additional team member or if they've left. So then we'll go into using the tool. So if any of you on today's session are going through the tool at the same time, now would be a good time to open up your data flow mapping tool, and then we can go through that together. So now you should see that the CyberComply dashboard is on your screen. So if anyone cannot see my screen, then please do let me know. But if not, we'll go straight into it. So this is the CyberComply dashboard. As you see, we'll have the 4 integrated tools that I mentioned earlier. So we've got our VS Risk Cloud. So this is built around the ISO 27001 framework, and it allows you to carry out asset-based risk assessments with this. Then we have the Compliance Manager. So I mentioned that briefly in the introduction. It's essentially a library of legislation that's all relevant to managing the information security, and of course has those features that we mentioned earlier. Then we have the data flow mapping tool, which of course we're going through today, which allows you to map out the flow of your personal data, as I've mentioned, and is also aligned to Article 30 of EU GDPR. Then we have the DPIA tool. So this is one of our new tools, and it directly integrates into the data flow mapping tool. So it allows you to carry out those risk assessments on those high-risk processes. So before we go into the data flow mapping tool itself, first of all, I'm going to take you through some of the areas of the tool here. So if we first of all go into account summary. So if we go into account summary here, this is where you will find your license expiration date. So you can see how long you would have left before you need to renew, so it doesn't catch you off guard. There's also where you add the users. So to add a user, you simply select the plus icon here, type in their email. The user will then receive an invitation email from CyberComply, which it does expire after 24 hours. So just be wary. You can contact myself or my colleague, and then we can resend the invitation if it did expire. And then these are the role statuses that I mentioned earlier. So first of all, we have Organization Administrator. Organization Administrator allows that user to change the role statuses of other users and also full editing capabilities within the tool. Then you have Contributor. So Contributor allows the user to have full editing capabilities in the tool, but you aren't able to change the role statuses of other users. And then we have Read Only. So Read Only is a good role for stakeholders or senior management, and it allows you to, or allows those users to review everything that you're working on, so the reports, the actual map you started creating, if it was the VS risk, the risk assessment, etc., but they don't have any editing capabilities. And also the read-only roles aren't included in that 5 user access. So you can have additional read-onlys to the 5 contributors and your 1, or 4 contributors and your 1 organization administrator. And then we've got Revoked, which I've spoken about previously. So also you can see here, we've got the organization details. So you would just add that account and your organization's address here. So then we have user details. So this is a good part of the tool for any consultants. If you're working with your clients and your clients all have a CyberComply account, so whether that's data flow mapping tool or another tool, you can switch between the accounts here. So all you need to do is access, and then you type in the password that you've set up, and then it will take you into that account. So with your 1 email address, you can access all those accounts. And then it's also your own account there. So then we go into the settings part. So in the settings, this is where you can customize different areas of the tool, which is crucial for making the data flow map that you create as specific to your organization as possible. So we have classifications here. Now the classifications are what you would assign to a particular record. So the particular record that is holding the personal data items that you're moving through that process. So we have the default here, so confidential to restricted. And then if your organization works with any customized ones, then this is where you would view that. So you can see I've just added custom. All you need to do is add other classification, type that in, toggle it off if you don't want to use it anymore, or you can delete it as well. Then we have custom regions. So this is in line with the asset location. So we've got the list of countries that you would select where that asset is located, and then if you wanted to specify that even further, so for example, I've got United Kingdom, that's the location, but then to specify really where that asset is being located, you can have Cambridgeshire. So you can see how that would work. Works in the same way of adding it. If you don't want to use it or don't want it available as an option, you can toggle it off, or you can delete it like so. So then we have the contact details. Now the contact details, if you toggle this on to use registered address as contact details, that takes the address from the account or your account summary, so when you set that up. However, if the account that you've set up isn't the controller, or the account that owns this data flow map tool isn't acting as the controller, then this is where you would add the controller's details. So if you use the registered address, it's automatically going to take your account to be the controller in the sense of GDPR. So then also, as you can see, you would add the data protection officer details and also a representative if you are working with that. So then here is where we add the customized personal data items. Everything you can see here, I've added customized. So we've got a default list, name, address, credit card number, etc. Typical things that you'd find an organization would process. So here is where you would really specify that even further. And it's good to remember that everything, or as detailed as you can be with the data items that you do process, that is all going to show in your report. So the more specific you can be, the better, because that's really truly demonstrating your process as accurate as it can be. It works in exactly the same way. You just add your personal data item, type it in. If you don't want it to be available as an option, you can toggle it off, or you can just simply delete it, like so. Then we have data subject. So it works in exactly the same way as personal data items. You'd add your customized data subject. So you can see works in exactly the same way. And then we've got our data sources, which again works in exactly the same way. So once you've built out that, and obviously you can go dip in and out, so you can go into data flow mapping tool, start mapping out your process, come back out into the settings if necessary to add the relevant information, and then go back into the tool. So I'm just showing you this is at the beginning, but it's not something that you can't go back into. So another way you can get to the data flow mapping tool is here. So when you first open the data flow mapping tool, it will take you into organization processes. Prior to that, it is good to go to this drop-down menu and go to organization assets. So this is where you input your asset register into the CyberComply portal. So another way that all of the tools are integrated is that no matter what tool you have, it will all pull through from this asset register. So it's not something you have to duplicate and add multiple times. Two ways you can add your assets. Either as an Excel spreadsheet, so you would download the template, and then I will just show you what that would look like, as I've got one from earlier. So if you downloaded the Excel template, this is what you'll find. So you have the 4 mandatory fields here. So reference, asset type, operator, and location. So you'd fill out those. There is also room to put the description and owner. It's not mandatory, however. So there is no limit to the amount of assets that you can add. You can completely populate this as much as you need, to scale with enterprise-sized organizations and small and medium-sized organizations. So once you're happy with that, what you do is you drag and drop your Excel template into this box here, simply select import, and then within moments your entire asset register will populate onto the portal. Alternatively, you can add an individual asset. So perhaps you want to do this when you're building on the asset register that you inputted in the first instance. It has exactly the same fields that are mandatory to enter. So your asset type, your reference, your operator, owner, and location. You would add that in, just so you're aware. This is our drop-down asset type list that we have. Then you would save, and again, your asset would be created. So you can open specific assets by, as you've just seen, I've just selected on a few there, and it opens up into the middle panel. If you want your entire asset register to open up on the middle panel, you can simply select up here, and it will open everything. So then we have the 3 that I've opened on the middle. So we've got these additional context tabs at the bottom here that you can see. Now, I'm going to go through the specifics of these in the organization processes. So that's when we actually get onto the map itself, just as there's more of these fields that have information in them. So it gives a bit more context. However, they are exactly the same. So you'll find as you're moving through CyberComply, no matter what tool, what part of a particular tool, all of these will be available, and it is to allow you as the user ease from moving between each part of the tool and navigating around without getting lost, and also getting familiar with the type of information that you can associate and the different types of report. So you can pull off a report about your asset register, whether that's specific 3 assets that you've opened up or the entire list. And this report will show all of this additional context here, and then it just shows how that particular asset is associated to other areas of your CyberComply, so VS risk, other processes, etc. So once you have inputted some of your asset register, then it would be time to go into the organization processes. And like we mentioned before, every part of the tool nothing's set in stone. So everything it enables you to go back and edit it, add to it at a later stage as well, and really evolve as your organization does too. So once we get into the organization processes, this is when you get to the bit of mapping out your process. So first of all, you need to decide and declare what particular process it is, and then you can get to mapping out the data flow. So before you create a particular process, first of all, it asks you to create a new group. You'd simply select create new group here. I've already created the group just so you don't have to watch me type out, but that's how you did it. So if you go create new group, it will ask you for the name, the subtitle, description. So once you've created your new group, it will then become available straight away from this drop down menu. So you select that, and then you'd go and create a process. So we're going to create the particular process for the process that we're doing. So the title would be HR process, and then the process owner would be our HR manager. And this instance, the acts as the controller. Now, if the process owner acts as the controller, you'll notice that you don't have to input the controller details. This is because, as I mentioned in the settings section, when you've chosen the registered address as the controller's address, it will automatically take that. If you didn't, however, and you didn't use a registered address, it will still ask you to input that controller address, or if you can see that the process owner is the processor, it will then ask you for that controller's details. So everything that you enter here is going to be recorded on the report, so it's important. So I've just put in some fillers there, but you can see how you would add the relevant fields to your specific process that you're mapping out. So you've got the scope of that process, so the purposes, given a bit more insight into why you are processing that personal data, why are you allowed, and then of course what technical and organizational security measures do you have in place. So everything it's asking you is all relevant, and it's everything that the GDPR is looking for you to be able to demonstrate that compliance. So once you're happy with that, you'd simply save, and then that's your process created. So, once you've got all that information, all you have to do is input into the relevant fields. So then this is where we go and enter the map. So you can see as well, you open up the process, you've got these additional context tabs as well here that you saw in the organization assets. So just to go over it, we've got related risks. If you have VS Risk Cloud and you wanted to associate any of those risk assessments to a particular process, you can do so here. The records, so once we go through and we actually start creating our data flow map, the records that we associate to that data will show here. As with the assets, this messages, they're not shown on any of the reports. So it's purely for your own reference, just to see out of the 5 users in your team, so you and the other 4 users, who's changing what, who's going on to the particular process and adding things, just to keep track really, and just to be able to refer back to it. So then you've got any processes. So if you wanted to show an association of another particular process to this process, and you wanted that documented on a report, then you can show that here. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same or a process in the same process group. When you select add process, it will simply give you a list of all of the processes, regardless of groups, in your CyberComply portal, and then you can associate that. You can assign tasks as well to you and any of the 5 users. So you can assign the task owner a deadline, write the implementation detail there, and then you can put a link as well. And then finally, we've got any related legal requirements and any related controls. So again, if you want to show that association on some kind of report, you can put off a report here, and that will show all of that. So now we will go into the actual map itself, I'm going to map out the process that we've created, and then I'll show you the report, and then we'll have our Q&A session. So as you can see, when I first came into this process map, the user manual pops up. So obviously I won't go through this with you now, but just so you're aware, it will pop up only on the first time that you enter a map. However, it's always available in this top corner here. So if when you're first getting started, you need to refer to it, it's always there. Then moving along, we have the view report and export report. So I'll go over those at the end once we've actually created our map, and they'll make a bit more sense. Then you have the comment tool, so you can leave a comment on anything on your map, whether that's a data input, it's a data subject, an asset, or a data connection line. You can leave a comment on here. In the comment, you can add supporting documentation as well. So it's all about just building as much reference as for you and the other users that are on the portal. Then we have the connection tool. So the connection tool shows the transfer of the personal data items. So once you start populating the map, and you'll see this in just a few moments, the direction of the arrow correlates to the direction of the transfer, and then as you start to actually populate the map with particular data items, this is when you'll see a number. So before you even go into the report, just looking at your map, you'll be able to clearly see how the data items are flowing, and also how many at each stage of your process. So that's the data connection tool. Then we've got the move tool. So essentially it does what it says on the tin. It will allow you to move anything on the map. So whether that's when you first dropped it onto the canvas and then you just want to put that in the right shape that you want your map to be, or when you've created the map, as you can see me moving this, the connection line isn't breaking. So once you've got quite a complex map, as your organization evolves, so does your process. So you may wish to just manipulate the configuration slightly, so you can add other sections of your process at the relevant parts. It allows you to do that. And then finally, we have the hand tool, which is probably the most important tool on the actual map itself. So this allows you to open up and fill out what we call the right hand attribute panel. So I will show you that in just a second while we're going through the map, but essentially that panel creates your report. So all of the information that you enter in that panel, that is what is going to be shown on the report. And you would write all that information on each of your assets, inputs, and data connection lines. So all of that will make sense in just a few moments. But then we've got the just default zoom in, zoom out, delete, duplicate, redo, undo. So I'll just show you to remove it like so. Cool. So now we'll start actually populating our map. So you can see here I have collapsed this library just so it stays out for us. You can see at the top it's got add new asset. So I know that I showed you how to add these and populate your asset register onto CyberComply. If you do get to this section of the process and you realise, oh no, I've got an asset, haven't added it in my register, I'm going to have to go out and start all again. No, that's fine. You can just add it here. So if you go and add asset, it will bring up the asset list, the asset type list, exactly as you would see it in the organization asset area of the tool, obviously just here. So all you need to do to add your asset, select on the type, then with your hand tool, open up, so you see here we've got our attributes panel, and then all of these fields that it's asking for are what you would see when you created it in the first instance. So you would just reference it, then that's what it would be named as, the operator location, etc. And this would then be available in the asset register, so globally as well, not just in this map. So then we've got our data input. So that, of course, is our point of the process where our data is entered into the process. Now, you can have as many of these data inputs as you need in your process. Once you make the first data connection line from your input to the first asset, that is when you'll be able to open up that attributes panel and you'll be able to reference it, so name it, and then specify which data items are going in at that point and the method, so how they actually entered the process. There you'll just see as well, just while that reminds me, we've got the bar that just popped up, just reminding me to save. So the save option is always available in this top corner here, but it will remind you periodically just to be sure. So then we have the data subject. Now, I don't have any that is necessary on this particular map that I'm demonstrating. However, you would use this on your process if there was a point where any of the data items are returned back to the data subject. So in the example of a sales process, when that data subject gets the receipt, obviously some of those personal data items that first entered the process when they made the sale will be on the receipt. So it's instances like that that you would put this icon on your particular map. So now I'm going to start adding the assets onto the map. I'll then connect them all, put in the data items, and then we'll show you the report. And you'll probably notice how I just, on the asset and the data input, all you need to do is select it and it'll drop it straight onto the map. And then you use your move tool to then just put it in the configuration that you would like, you know, whatever would fit that previous planning you've done before you get to this point. And then you can do the connection lines. So in our process, we need line manager and 2 of those. So you can see it just drops straight on. So then you do the HR. Also, it's worth noting you don't have to do it in the order that I am. I find it easiest to drop all of my assets onto the canvas itself, then to connect them all so I can see clearly the flow, and then to go on each of the connection lines to fill out that attributes panel. Some organizations or some people, it's all personal preference really, would prefer to do it step by step. So this is the way I sort of demo how to do it, as I find it the simplest. But of course, if you'd rather do it section by section, then please feel free. So we've got our HR team, then we've got our file cabinet, our secure destruction company, like so. So then you can see if I don't, it will drop it onto the map, but if I want to move it somewhere else, then I can do like so. So and then remember to go on the hand tool to move around the canvas as well. So finally we have our payroll. So you can see how easy it is as well once you've done all of the work beforehand, and as in putting in your asset register, you would have spoken to the relevant members of the department for the process that you're mapping out, so you'll know the flow of your data before you get to the mapping process is all about just visualizing that and making sure you are complying with that GDPR. So we will go here and here. So once you've got everything on the map that you need, so remember as well, you can add anything to the map at any point. So I could complete this whole entire map and then come back to it and edit it and add new aspects. That's not an issue. So your connection tool, the first orange circle to the second one. You don't need to drag it, it's simply a click like so. And then here you'll notice the arrow. So it will always, the arrow will always be the way that you sort of do the connection. So I want the arrow from the HR to go towards the payroll, but if I just selected the payroll first, then obviously the arrow is going to go backwards. So it's just be wary of that while you're doing it. If you do make a mistake though and the arrow is going the wrong way, then you can just simply remove the connection line and start again. So that's not too bad. So like so. So now we've got all our connection lines. Now it's just a matter of actually populating essentially the report, which is your end result. So we'll go to our first data input here. So you can see we've got the data source. Now the data source is one of the customize options that you have in the settings section. So it's either the data subject, or anything customized that you've added. So we'll put employees in this instance, and then you've got reference, so it'll be our absent employee. And then method, so how did those data items actually enter in the process? So in this instance, it will be phone call. So our absent employee has rung up the line manager to say that they're not coming in because they're unwell. It's not in this instance, but if your data was encrypted at this stage, you can toggle this on and then add your encryption details. If you wanted to add any comments here, you can. Of course, there is the comment tool as well, but this is just another option to be able to add those. So then we go to the add data. Now there's two ways you can add data, either individually, so they are moving through your process as individual data items, and at any stage of the process you can remove one from the next transition stage. So if they're not transferred to the next asset in your process, then you might want to do it individually. Other way you can do it is by a record. So I'm going to show you that in the second data input we have. So we'll just concentrate on the individual items at the moment. So we've got our data subjects. Again, this was a customized option in the settings section. So all of these that you can see on the first part of the scroll down menu, they're all of the default options. So they're already integrated into the tool. Now, on any of the customized sections, whether it's items, subjects, sources, anything, your customized fields or the things that you've entered will always be at the bottom. So you just simply scroll straight to the bottom and your most recent customized option will be there. So we'll select employee for our data subject. And the same with personal data items. So I said that there was default options. That's everything you can see here. Straight to the bottom, that is where you'll find your personalized ones. So in this instance, we're going to have the reason for absence, upcoming engagements, predicted period of absence, and the medical intervention and their name. But you can see as well how it would help to be as specific as you can when you're adding those customized data items, because all of these that you can see, yeah, we do have the default, but everything that you can see is going to show on that personal data inventory in the report. So it's just good to be as specific as you can, really. If there is any sensitive data items moving through, then you would declare that here. So perhaps it's physical health. So there's your lawful basis. So why are you able to process the personal data items? Well, we'll put contractual necessity as it's our absent employee. And then, of course, if you selected any sensitive data items, it will say, what is the exception? So why are you able to process sensitive data items? We'll put employment law. So you can see how this will build up. You simply save, apply, and then you can see we've got our number 6 here. Moving to the second, same thing, data source, employees, reference, absent employee. Method, it will be face-to-face. So our absent employee is having a face-to-face meeting with the line manager in this instance, and it's filling out their return to work form. So add data. So we'll create a record. So I'll put return to work form. This is where the customized classifications come into play as well. So we've got confidential, private, public, and restricted, and any customized ones that you've added. So I will put restricted for this. Format, physical text. Recipients, will put the line manager. And then retention period. So if it is unknown, you can declare that that's unknown here. I'm just going to put 7 years, as that seems to be a typical Outlook default. So we'll create. And then it's exactly the same as if they were individual. So you've created the record now, but what is that data subject for that record? What are those data items? Remember though, when you're doing the record, the data items can't be separated, so they will move as a whole for the whole entire rest of the process. So we'll just add some here. like so. So you see how I'm building up those data items. Any sensitive data items, we'll put physical health again, and then it'll be the same lawful base as an exception. But of course, in these fields that you see me putting in, you'll put whatever's relevant to your organisation. And then you simply select save. So one other thing, I have done it as 2 different data inputs just to show you the differentiation without getting confused. You can do the record and then also data items as individuals from the same data input if you wish. I've just separated it for this demonstration just to show you both. Again, it's however you want to do it. So you select save and apply. So now you can see we've got 7 here. So then it's a case, all the data items are in your process. If there was another part of your process, so perhaps the HR team got specific information from another source, then you'd put another data input here. So if you don't do that, then the data items, you have only these that you've got to work with. So you'd go to the next asset, to our line manager, and then it'd be the storage. So how long are these particular data items being stored on that asset? So I'm just putting 7 years for everything, just for argument's sake. Of course, that'll be whatever specific to your organization. Same with this line manager, storage, known years, 7, and then apply. And then you go to your next data connection line. So you've got the method again. So how are these data items being moved to the next asset? So we'll choose email. Again, if it's encrypted, you'd add that. Data, as it's a record, we can only select the record as a whole. Save, apply, and then you've got 7. So in this case, we've got a method. So we'll choose email again. Add data. So we've got the data items, but because they're not moving as a record, you can delete any of these if they're not moved to the next stage. So in this example, upcoming engagements, our absent employee had to tell the line manager this. However, the line manager doesn't need to tell HR. It's an unnecessary processing of that personal data item. So you can just remove that. And then once you select save, you can then see, okay, there's only now 5 going to there. So straight away by looking at the map, you can see that one of those items wasn't processed to the next stage. So, and then it's all about just going around and building this out. Our HR team, because both of the record and the original email has been transferred, so you would need to declare that for both. So we'll go to that like so, and apply. Then another connection line, again, if this is where you would show which is being transferred. And it will be email again and apply. HR team to our attendance database, so also on here, the storage, and then you'd need to declare how long this is stored. Like so. And then that's simply how you would build out your map. So in this instance, the original email doesn't need to be transferred beyond the HR team. So we just select the return to work form. You can't change anything because it's all associated to a record that you've already created. You save the method. So we'll put upload because it's a attendance database. Apply. You got your 7. Here. Again, add the data. So just the return to work form, save, method, face to face. So our HR team will actually physically put that return to work form in that employee file cabinet. Again, the storage period. So you can see how this would build out, and also why I find it easiest to do it this way. Because once you've got the map out, it's just a case of focusing on those particular data items. But like I said, you can do it, you could add the data input in the first asset and then add the data items and move along. So the fundamentals are all the same. It's just how you, as your projects and your individuals, the sort of order you wish to map out the data. So we'll just put a face to face here. like so. So that is our map. Yes, we've done a simple one. You can see if you move it like so, it doesn't break. So, you know, if I wanted to put another data connection line in here, or data input to the payroll, you could do that. Also, just to note before we view the report, if any of your assets are located in a third country, it will prompt you. So when you do your connection line, what it will do is it will just have a red triangle with an exclamation mark and then once you use your hand tool and select on that data connection line, it will just prompt you, it's a transfer to a third country. What safeguards do you have in place? So then from that drop down menu, you would declare those safeguards. And then as soon as you've done that, then the red exclamation mark will go from the connection line and that will show in your report. So we will view the report. So as you can see, I've just simply selected that icon to view the report. The one next to it, export, you can export the report into a Word document. So you don't have to use our logo, you don't have to use CyberComply, you can have your own organization's logo. So we've got here the contact details. So as it was the registered address, Care and Employer Limited, that's the demo account I'm using, and you can see that that is the controller's address. So the account who owns it is acting as a controller. Of course, if you didn't select that to use the registered address, and that would be the controller's contact details that you've imported. So we've got the process overview. So this is all the information from when we were creating the process. So in organization processes, everything that you add there, that's where this shows. And then you have a summary of the entire process. So just by looking at this top bit, you can see the lawful basis. You can see how many data items there are sensitive data items, no transfers outside the EEA, etc. So then it will give you an overview of the map, so you can clearly see the numbers and the direction of the flow. And then your personal data inventory. So this is where those customized data items come into play, and this is why they're really important. So again, you've got a summary, and then you have a specific data inventory. So we've got the record and all of the data items associated to that record, like so. So the more specific you can be, the better. Then we have all of the data items that aren't associated to a record, so all of those that are entering the process at a later stage. And you can see, again, we've got the inventory of all of those data items. As I mentioned at the start, I didn't put a data subject on my map. If you did, this is where that would show. And then we've got the asset register. So these are all of the assets that are on your map, and you can see the records that are on and being stored on those assets. And then we have the transfers. So the data transfers on those connection lines, the method, the exact items that are still being transferred, where they're going from, to, etc. So you can see how that would build out there. And like I say, every single data connection line you have on your map will be in this table. How I mentioned about the third country transfer, if that was the case and you did declare those safeguarding options that you had, then that's where this would list here. And that essentially is the data flow mapping tool. So I will just save this. Like I said, it's all always save at the top corner. However, if you haven't saved in a while, it will prompt you just to be sure. So we'll close that. And I'll take us back to the dashboard. So now we do have time to go over any questions and answers as well that any of you may have. So please do feel free to pop them in the chat box. Like I said, if it's relevant and will be beneficial to all of the other attendees, then I'll read out the question and the answer. But if not, I can answer privately, or you will receive a follow-up. So if there are any questions that you have